I heard a stat somewhere that it's 10 times more expensive to mishire than not hire at all. Understand the role. So when I went into recruitment years ago, I was taught never, ever, ever work a role you do not understand. If you've got a good enough understanding of the position, then you will know the style of candidate, you'll know what they usually like and how they tick. I really will understand that candidate. This is really my basic training when I first went into recruitment. If you have that information, you can play it back to them through the recruitment process. Through the interviews, you keep them interested. And when you come to offer, you can go through every point that they talked about and show them how you're offering everything they asked for. It's really basic sales, actually. You get them to agree on everything until the last thing they haven't said yes to is the final price, the cost of the car, the colour was right, the engine capacity, all that sort of thing. It's the same in recruitment. They hopefully don't know you're doing that. You can't do that if you don't understand the candidate. But you've got to be honest, and so if you can't offer them everything they ask for, well, something's gone wrong, but is it close enough for them? So always, always, always be honest. If you want low attrition, don't promise something you can't give them. Be honest, it might be good enough. Every touch that a candidate has with you, whether it's email, reception, phone calls, literature, anything, you've got to be a good ambassador for your company. If they are not, you have not covered your basics. So get that right. Before you even start recruiting, get your people to be ambassadors for the company. Now, face-to-face interviews should be designed for each role. Don't try one size fits all. In my personal experience, that just will not work. Don't let untrained interviewers interview alone. Might be common sense, really. Train the interviewers and have them shadow until they can fly solo. Think about what I said about ambassadors. If an interviewer is asking the wrong questions, inappropriate questions, or is just doing it wrongly, it's going to give a bad impression. So train your interviewers.
We started doing telephone interviews, and we also introduced electronic notes for the candidates that would be easier to share. So the telephone interviews would include an initial technical assessment. So when we first started doing them, we found an online whiteboard app where we would collaboratively with the candidate present a problem and then ask them to solve it real time. And also there was a coding aspect to that as well. So this obviously allowed us to determine their suitability a bit earlier. So we tried to keep the overall template flexible for the different roles and just have kind of colour-coded sections that are more specific to certain areas. So this really improved the ability to access the notes afterwards for the different interviewers and for HR. It helped us be a bit more efficient. The most important thing, it made us, or I hope, more fair and more consistent with the interview process. But the live assessment at the telephone interview wasn't that representative, and it also meant because we were doing a live assessment, we felt we needed 2 interviewers present so that we wouldn't miss anything that was coming up. We wanted to see if there was any way we could kind of improve that further and reduce the amount of time that was being spent. So this led us to create a remote assessment, which again I'm sure many of you are doing. So we split out the questions that we were asking at the telephone interview and at the face-to-face. We identified a few of those, a subset that we could then ask at sort of in a remote way. So we've got a document that we send out via our agencies or direct to candidates that just explains a little bit of boilerplate stuff about what we're asking them to do, how long it should take. So it's around 45 minutes to an hour that we aim for this to take. And they complete it remotely and then we review it at the telephone interview stage. The CV will look suitable, we now invite for face-to-face interview. It takes about 30 minutes. If they're suitable, we invite them to complete the remote exercise. And then if that's successful, we invite them to the face-to-face interview. So this is a happy medium between the amount of time an interviewer needs to spend doing the telephone interview versus sort of candidate drop-off and things like that. It's a really good opportunity for me to explain more about the company, make sure the candidates are aware of what we do and why it's a great place to work. It's seen a much better rate of exercise completion, which is one of the main goals that we set out to do. And we have a much better conversation around the remote exercise because we're there with them. It forms the first part of our face-to-face interview. It's a nice sort of continuity point from the previous interactions you've had with the candidate.
Experience really counts. So I know there are companies still in Cambridge that, unless you're a red brick 2-1 honours, they're not interested. Certainly that's not the case at DisplayLink. There is a massive however. You have to be of that calibre. So it's not what bit of paper you've got, not what sort of qualification you've got. The question is, do you have enough experience to be able to do the role, or show that you will be able to do the role? And will you be able to function well enough with your colleagues at DisplayLink? Are you of sufficient intellectual calibre to have those high bandwidth conversations with those colleagues? And you know, it is a fact of life. If you are not of a, let's say, a high enough IQ to have those conversations with those engineers, and they're way brighter than me, most of them at DisplayLink, you are going to struggle. You really are going to struggle. So again, there's no one straight, honest answer. It's not the bit of paper, it is your ability. Yes, intellectual capability really, really matters, but the proof is in the experience.
I think the intelligence aspect is measured from the exercises that we ask people to do. So the remote exercise and the face-to-face exercise, the technical assessment. So you get a good understanding of how intelligent they are, how they're able to solve these problems. And from the experience, this kind of comes out of our questioning around, like from this template that we have lots of things where we dive into their past challenges and their successes, what they found particularly difficult and how they resolve those problems, so they can discuss through those. And that helps us get a measure of their experience. Rely on our agencies a lot to do this historically, so because things are so slow at the moment, I'm sure Alex and his team are doing a great job. It's just the market's really slow. We're just trying different things to get people in. We've tried sort of headhunting on LinkedIn before to find people. We put adverts in the paper as well to advertise for different roles. Cambridge News is pretty good for that.
Do you know why your colleagues don't refer people to you? Have you ever found that out and talked to them? It's an interesting subject, but you should be getting half your staff via referrals. And the referral one via these meetups is a strong one as well, because a referral is not necessarily your mate. It's somebody you know who is good, not somebody you know who is looking. Do your colleagues know that referral is finding someone who you know is good? You can make them look by giving them the opportunity, talking to them, getting them to come in for coffee. Not an interview. You're not looking, but you might be if you knew what we had here. Come in for a coffee, have a look around. Do all these things. We get, hard to say, 10% of the people we hire have come in for a coffee and not applied.